regulation of blood, blood pressure, vasoconcentration, and guarding entrances and exits of the body, sphincter muscles. Then fifth one, the maintaining body temperature, contracting muscles, release heat. So this is the seven functions, and sixth functions are movement of the muscle functions. The next one, see, observe the contraction and reflections of muscles. So this is the contraction and uh, contraction and relaxation of muscles. Like that, muscles full bones together. Then second one, contraction. So how do the contraction movements in and one place to another place? So these movements are help to the relaxation of muscles and the functions of muscles. Then contractions like that involves shortings of the muscles. Then relaxation involves lengthening of the muscles. So see, observe the first one, cell muscles at rest. So there is no activity and stimulus in the resting period of muscles. Then second one, the calf muscles contract when reflexed. This is the second one, contracted of when flexed. Then third one, calf muscle does not relax, causing cramp. So this is the complete uh, contraction and relaxation of muscles. Then next one, types of muscles. How many types of working mechanism and structures and divided to the physicians scientists are divided to three parts like that skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles and smooth muscles. This is the cardiac muscles, then this is the skeletal muscles, this is the smooth muscles. Smooth muscles is location in gastrointestinal areas. This is the function of digestion of food and mineral particles. And this is the skeletal muscles and structure and strengthening of bones. Then this is the cardiac muscles. This formation of cardiac structures and this is the cardiac muscle is involuntary muscles. The next one, the next one skeletal muscle tissues. See, this is the skeletal muscle tissues associated with and attached to the skeleton. So this is the main structure and functions of skeletal muscles. This is the associated with and attachment attached to the skeleton and the support of skeleton formation. Then next one, under our conscious and control, conscious and luck is voluntary, because if you allow movement to A place to B place and B place to A place, this is the voluntary movement, and this is called as conscious movement. Then next one, microscopically, the tissue appears straightened. Microscopically, the tissue appears straightened. Then fourth one, cells are long, cylindrical, and multinucleated. So the cells are long, cylindrical, and multinucleotide. So this is the skeletal muscle structures and internal tissues. The skeletal muscle cells are long, multiple nucleotide, cylindrical, separated by contractive tissues. Each independent cells is stimulated by a branch from a motor neuron. This is the one of the nuclei. The skeletal neurons having the nuclei and the contact to endomysium separate the cells. The next one, the cardiac muscles tissues. So this is the functions of cardiac muscle tissues makes of walls of the heart. The heart functions, the heart structures are divided to two layers and the epicardium and hemicardium and epicardium. Endocardium and epicardium having the middle of place the filled with the fluid. This fluid of protect of the product of art and earthquakes of outside. So because the cardiac muscles are makeups of walls of the heart, the unconsciously they controlled. This is the unconsciously controlled. This is called as name as the another name involuntary muscles. The involuntary muscles is located in cardiac muscles. The next one microscopically appears straightened. So once you have to appear to the microscopically appear straightened. The cells are short branching and have a single nucleus. So this is the only single nucleus cells formation of the cardiac muscles. The next one, the smooth muscles and the smooth muscle structures and functions. This is the smooth muscles, the make up walls of organs and blood vessels, and tissues is non-striated and involuntary muscles. This type of smooth muscles are functionally involuntary and non-striated. The cells are long, trapped and one and have a single nucleus. See, this is the observer of location and functions of smooth muscles tissues. Then next one, the anatomy of skeletal muscles like the tendon, contact, connective tissues, and muscle fiber bundles and muscle fiber bundle and sarcolemma, skeletal muscle fiber cells and skeletal muscle. So this is the skeletal muscles here, the particular anatomy of structure of skeletal muscles. The next one, uh, organization of skeletal muscles. Is a very important of organization. So this is the bone here. The bone attached to muscle. This is the elongated to associate with the tendon. The tendon function is the attachment to the bone to muscle. Then this is the contractive tissues and muscles having the fiber bundles. So fiber bundles. This is the nerve attached to the nerve because the skeletal muscles are voluntary functions because the nerve impulse are communicated to the muscle muscle contractions. Then sarcolemma, muscles fiber membrane, the nucleus having the one of the nucleus. This is a complete the blood vessels. The sarcolemma reticulum and microbubule myofilament is having this skeletal muscles. So like that, see observe the uh, hierarchy of muscle structures like that muscle fiber bundle and muscle fiber and myofibrils and myofilaments. See the components of skeletal muscles and fibers. Which type of components of having the skeletal muscles and the performance and functionally and movements of which type of components and functions and description. So the component is the muscle fiber. So if it is the first one, the muscle fiber, description is single muscle cells. This function muscle fiber, the function is responsible for the muscle contractions because the muscle contraction is one of the moment activation because One person is moving to A place to B and B place to A. It is the use food of the muscle fiber. Then next one, myoglobin. This is the myoglobin is one of the protein. Oxygen, the description, oxygen binding pigment. The similar to hemoglobin in a skeletal muscle fiber. This stores oxygen for use during muscle contraction. The myoglobin, the functions of stores oxygen for use during the muscles contractions. Then sarcolemma description membrane of a muscle fiber, the surroundings of the function, the surroundings of muscle fiber, and regulates the entry and exit of materials. The sarcolemma is very important because membrane of muscles fiber, the entry and exit of the neutrons and microfilaments. The next one, sarcoplasma. The description of sarcoplasma, cytoplasm of muscle fiber, the function of is the sarcoplasma is the site of metabolic process for normal cell activities, contains mycoglobin and glycogen which stores energy for muscle contractions. So this is the very important to sarcolemma. The next one, sarcoplasmic reticulum. The sarcoplasmic reticulum description is smooth endoplasmic reticulum is a muscle fiber. The function is stores calcium ions needed for muscle contractions. Then components is myco myofibrils. Myofibrils. The organized bundles of myofilaments, cylindrical structures as long as the muscle fiber itself. This function is contains of microfilaments that are responsible for muscle contractions. Then components like the thick filament. This is the thick filament is one of the protein of myosin, like that fine microfilament composed of bundles of protein called of myosin about 11 nanometer is diameter. This function is binds to actin and cases muscles contractions. Then thin filament. This is the called as actin. This microfilament composed a standards for 14 called actin about to 10 nanometer in diameter. The binds of myosin and cases muscles contractions. So this is the components of skeletal muscles and fibers. The micro microanatomy of muscle fiber. Microanatomy like the longitudinal section of skeletal muscles tissues. The 400x 400x of the skeletal muscles. The skeletal muscles fiber cells and nucleus have the nucleus and steroids the skeletal muscle fibers. Then next one, the next one, the microanatomy is a muscle fiber the cell. See this observed to the transfu tubules, sarcoplasmic reticulum, then sarcolemma, muscle fiber membrane, and mitochondria, myoglobin, and then one thick myofilaments, and fourth one thin myofilament and mycofibril. This is one the nuclei. So next one, complete anatomy cell structures of skeletal muscles, the muscle fiber and microfiber at jet line and sarcomere and thin filament and thin microfilament and myosin molecule of thin microfilament and thin filaments. See, observe the thick filament and thin filament, myosin and actin. Actin, myosin both are proteins in have the location part of sarcomere. Then thin mycofilament like that mycofilament or myosin, the active site actin molecules and actin standards, troponin and tropomyosin, and it is the formation in thin filament. This thin filament is activation to movement of the functionally the particular movements like that to this particular uh, mm, activations. The next one, thick myofilament. The myosin head as ATP and actin binding sites. The myosin till filament myosin micros ings. Then next one, see up the sarcomere. The microtome images of sarcomere, longitudinal structure, the zone of overlap, Z line, A band, and G line. This is the lines of thickness, and these lines are actin myosin filaments. The activation to the particular to one place to another place, the thin filaments having these particular areas. The next one, the sarcomere functions, and next one, sliding filament theory. This is the very important, the sliding filament theory of human being. The myosin is attached to actin molecules at binding active site. This is the active sites of the first one. The myosin is attached to actin molecules. That is the function mainly at binding activity site. Then myosin plus on actin casing thin microfilament to slide across thick myofilaments towards the center of the sarcomere. The sarcomere shortens casing muscles fiber to contract. So this is the sliding filament, high band, A band, Z line. So acting and stimulus and response of skeletal muscles. This is the bonding of sliding filament theory. The sarcomere at rest time, resting movement and non-resting movement, the contraction and filament sliding. So contraction and resting filaments of this, those are called as the sliding filament theory. Then next one, ATP. ATP means is adenosine triphosphate is the one of the energy currency. One is the called as the energy currency. The energy currency of cells, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and ATP molecules is made of one adenosine molecule bounded three phosphate molecules. One adenosine and three phosphates of like that. The reversible animation of ATP and ADP plus phosphate plus energy. The short ammonia animation of photosynthesis, phosphorylation of dephosphorylation will start automatically on next slides. See this one the images as uh, not here. So the physiology is skeletal muscle contraction events at the microfilament. The first image observed to resting sarcomere because the adenosine releasing and phosphatin releasing but not attaching on the tropomyosin and activation. So because the ADP release and phosphate release then gives the energy because the myosin aids and troponin aids are not communicated this first images because this is called as the resting sarcomere. Then second one is the active sites exos. So this is the calcium ions are released in the second option. Then at the sarcoplasma activated the particular area. Then say step two, cross bindings formation. The cross binding formation called as the attachment of adenosine diphosphate and plus phosphate energy and gives the particular area. Then the fifth image and the third image, the pivoting of myosin. heads. The pivoting of myosin heads the communicate to the energy sarcoplasma and sarcomere. The step 4 cross bridges detachment like that a detachment like that the particular movements and to the particular wavelengths of calcium ions and adenosine triphosphate and passports are releasing to energy. Then fifth one, the myosin reactivation, and because the muscle contraction will be resting folding of resting period. So see, next one, sixth and step one, the calcium gets in the sarcoplasmic reticulum SR open along the calcium to diffuse into the sarcoplasma. The calcium will bind to troponin on the thin microfilament actin casing into the changes its shape. This then plus tropomyosin wave from the active sites of actin molecules, allowing myosin aids to bind to the actin and myosin fibers. See, observe the next one. The slide says the myosin aids are energized by the presence of adenosine triphosphate at the ATP binding site. Energy is released as phosphate bonds of the ATP breaks. Then once the activity sites are exposed, the energized myosin aids hook into actin molecules forming the cross bridges. Because cross bridges is communicated to the actin and myosin to actin. The using the stored energy at the attached myosin aids pivot towards the center of the sarcomere. The ADP plus phosphates group are released from the myosin head. Then next one, a new molecule of ATP binds to the myosin head casing in the cross bridges to detach from the actin strands. The myosin head will get re-energized as the ATP plus ADP plus P. As long as the active sites are still exposed, the myosin head can bind again to the next active cells. So this is the how to communicate the functions to actin and myosin. So this is the clear images to Hall binding and resting sarcomere and activation sarcomere. The sliding filament theory uh, and this image. So this is the complete image to this bone to bone that attached to the this here particular location of tendon. This is the bone, the skeletal bone. This is the complete muscle. So this is the complete muscle bindings or night. Medicine. The muscle contractions, this will be the slides will be this one. The calcium and muscle contractions. The calcium and the muscle contractions will be go and follow the this particular methods. If the diet is low in calcium, therefore blood calcium is low. Do muscles still contract? If so, how? Interesting fact: the after death, calcium levels inside the muscle cells rise, and the body's levels of ATP drops inside the muscles. Myosin bonds to actin and the muscles contraction. However, with no ATP to rest to the cross bridge just and crossbit just and release the myosin of all of the muscles remain contracted and stiff. Is state is the called rigor 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 mortis. Rigor mortis is means the mortality rate. The muscles are there is no activating because the body formation by the cells and the muscle is automatically hardness. There is no having the oxygen, and it is the called as the rigor mortis. The next one, the keynotes of skeletal muscles fibers shorten as thin filaments interact with the thick filaments and sliding occurs. The trigger for contraction is the calcium ions released by the sarcomere. When the muscles fiber is stimulated by its motor neurons, contraction is an active process. The relaxation and the return to resting length is entirely passive. So this and the muscle contraction animation, the step-by-step animation of the sliding filament models here. Uh, energy for muscle contraction. The how to muscle contraction of muscles. Creatine and ADP convert to ATP. The creatine phosphate breakdowns as the few molecules of stored at ATP are spent in muscles contraction of the high energy of from the certain phosphate is the transfer to ADP, hereby creating more ATP. This transfer of potassium is shown opposite. Then once the muscles enters a resting phase, creatine P supplies are restored in the muscles from ATP produced by aerobic respiration. The energy for muscle contraction cannot. Once creatine phosphate stores are used up, the muscles will continue to contract only if more ATP can be generated. It obtains ATP through the aerobic respirations, oxidations of glucose if oxygen is available, or fermentation which produce lactic acid if no oxygen. So it is the lactic acid is the aerobic cellular reabsorption and the methods of acquiring ATP or muscles. The creatine phosphates, no oxygen and only enough for 8 seconds and muscles activities. The formation, no oxygen, glucose is broken down and the lactic acid is released as a byproduct 2 to 3 minutes. Aerobic cellular respiration is oxygen required minus glucose is completely oxidated from the water plus carbon dioxide plus many adenyl triphosphate molecules minus long-term energy. The myoglobin oxygen carrying molecules like hemoglobin only found in muscles like cells can temporarily stored in oxygen. Then automatically store the oxygen so the receiving the muscles because the muscles the functionally activated to one plus two another plus movements. The next one, the should creatine be used the supplementary for kids. Then next one, oxygen debate. How to the oxygen debate occurs when the athletics and muscles are demanding more ATP than can be provided. The answer is to get to generate ATP anaerobically. Certain P bond formation of ATP is replacement so the aerobically after exercise cases. Oxygen debate cannot the muscles. When skeletal muscles contract, they may produce two types of contraction: isotonic contraction, isometric contractions. Isotonic and isometric. So this is the isotonic contraction. As tension increases, more motor units re- Recruited length of muscles changes, usually resulting in movement of a joint. The tension load on a muscles stay constant during a movement. For example, lifting a baby, pick up of object, walking, etc. That is called as the isotonic contraction. The muscles movements as called as the isotonic contractions. Then this is the isometric contraction. No change in length of muscles when as tension increases. The length of a muscle stays constant. Iso means same. Metric means length. During the contraction, example holding a baby at the arm's length, pushing the against a closed door, core exercise. So this is called the isometric contractions. Then next one, anatomy of the muscular systems, the origin and insertion action. The origin of muscles attachment that remains fixed. The insertion, the muscles attachment, the moves. Action, what giant movement a muscles produce. For example, flexion, extension, adductions, etc. The next one, the muscles which microgram, the very receiving of contraction and relaxing period. A single muscles contraction. So when a muscles receive a stimulus, electric impulses, it will contract or twitch. The contraction period, latent period, relaxation period, and stimulation. Describe the action of the microfilaments during the muscle muscle fist. The tetanus. Sustained muscles contraction is called as the tetanus. Sustained contractions are like that summations, tetanus, and fatigue. When your muscles is stimulated repeatedly, it produces a sustained contraction is tetanus. What is the summation? What happens to the force of contraction during the summation? So that is the difference tetanus and this phase. The types of muscle fibers. Slow twitch red muscles and those are purely types of three types stated view. The types of muscle fibers like that marathon runner mainly slow twitch and sprinter mainly fastest twitch. Active muscles, inactive muscles. This is the active muscles. This is the inactive muscles. The complication of muscular muscular systems like that atrophy, reduction in size, uh, tone and power of muscles, inactive due to the paralysis, injury, lifestyle. Cases of muscles to atrophy. Initially, muscle size decreases in temporary but can become the permanent. So this is the difference between to relax mode and activate mode. Then normal dispatch of branches muscles and decrease in biceps biceps due to muscles atrophy. The severe atrophy due to a neuromuscular disorder. This is a neuromuscular disorder candidate. Show the particular list. Then hypertrophy. When an increases in muscles mass due to high intensity exercise or performance, enhancing drugs, anabolic steroids. Then side effects of anabolic steroids. Side effects of anabolic steroids, like that. This is the anabolic steroids side effects. So, being a one of the structure, see the serve actin holding the hands, the binding the men and women, hair and face and chest in women. Uh, it's some types of activities. The steroids and athletes more than uses the banned substance and athletes PowerPoint deadline with the banned substance athletes. Then it is also having the some documentary portion. So this is the our today class. Muscle contractions will be studying implement theory. Structure of muscles like the two three types of muscles. Voluntary muscles, involuntary muscles. This is the functionally divided two types, and muscle structures is three types. Uh, heart muscles, smooth muscles, and skeletal muscles. So those are three types and muscles. And tomorrow next class will be uh, the performance of increasing of blood coagulations and particular areas. So thank you, one and all.